Hi everyone, this is week 2 of our competitive marketing strategies class MKT 551. I'm Patty Wiggin, I'm your professor. I trust that you made it through the first week of the class. We had a couple of discussion threads and kind of a straightforward class last week. So this is our lecture for the second set of chapters that we're going to cover this week. And there's a lot of material in the book, and I don't cover every single slide or every single bit of content. I want you to read and kind of fill in where I've hit the highlights in the slides. One thing that I always try to do is I try to avoid a really, really long lecture because I think that gets a little dull. Although I know there's a lot of good information in the chapters, and I'll try to add or elaborate on it as I go through. So we're going to be talking in these slides about chapters 2, 3, and 4. The first chapter, chapter 2, is about the strategic planning process, which is what this whole class is about, is developing strategy. And it's also describing some of the aspects of the organization and the marketing plan itself. Chapter 3 is going to talk about how to go about doing an analysis of your external and internal environments by seeking different types of data. And the fourth chapter is then going to go more into SWOT analyses. And so one of the issues, or one of the constant practices and assignments that you'll have during the term is to do SWOT analyses by engaging in reading different cases. And so it can be kind of a lengthy process to go through and evaluate a case, but for the most part, what I'm going to ask you to do pretty much is to read the information, determine what you think the main problem is in the case for the organization, and then do a SWOT analysis and a situational analysis. So we're going to talk a little bit more about situational and SWOT analysis in these slides ahead. So one of the first aspects of creating a marketing plan is that you understand that a company has a mission, it has a vision, it has certain goals that are general or business goals that it wants to accomplish. But the marketing plan actually fits alongside different departments' plans, the operations plan, the regulatory affairs plan, even maybe the development and research plan. So marketing is just one aspect of how an organization is going to try to do its business. But one of the things that I love about marketing is that it's very active and interacts with every single department in the organization. And usually it's highly focused on accomplishing the mission and what the company is about and what it wants to do. So what's the difference between a mission and a vision statement? Well, there's a lot of them in your textbook. But a mission statement more or less kind of describes, and there's no perfect definition of this because everybody's mission statements are slightly different depending on the organization. But the mission statement is really what we're about. What is it that we do? What do we stand for? Who is it? Google used to have a statement that said, do no harm or do no evil. I think Southwest has their mission statement listed in the textbook. Dedication to the highest quality of customer service delivered with a sense of warmth, friendliness, individual pride, and company spirit. And if you've ever flown for Southwest or if you've ever done a report on the Southwest organization, you know it's a really dynamic company. It tends to err on the side of having fun. And their mission statement really talks about how they want to have a good time, they want to please customers with what they do. Now, so it could include things like your value. It could include things like the culture of the firm. I think we will be doing a case study on Zappos this term. And Zappos is a company that's been around a long time that started out selling shoes, but it's known for being a very, very flat, structured organization, and it's also known for a relaxed company culture and atmosphere. So Zappos has a certain type of mission statement that would be different than maybe more traditional online shoe seller or another organization that sells shoes, either also maybe in the traditional brick and mortar sense. But the vision statement then is going to be a little different than the mission. The mission is like who we are, how do we like to behave, how do we interact as an organization. But the vision has to do with more of what the organization is doing in the future. Like we want to become the best marketer of online shoes for any customer need out there. Or we want to serve customers in all areas of their foot requirements. It's a weird way to say it, but it's something where you talk more or less about the vision for where you want to go. You are who you are in your mission, but your vision is where you want to go as an organization. And then what falls from these things are all of the aspects of planning for a marketing plan, and then actually creating goals and objectives. And the key thing about the marketing plan, when it starts out, is you will have done a lot of research and a lot of homework about who you are, what your competitors are doing, who your customers are, and then you create goals. And goals are going to be very broad. Sometimes the different people who define goals talk about them as being vague, which I think is kind of a weird way to put it, but they're not necessarily something that you can pin down. They're a large statement with a broad implication. But right following the goal is going to be the objectives for the marketing plan, and those always have to be something that are specific and quantifiable so that you could go back later on and say, did we meet our goals? Did we attain the market penetration that we wanted to? Or did we sell X number of instruments into a certain field? Because that was our marketing objective. Now, following the objective statements is the whole issue of strategy. And strategies can be different types of things. They could be how we're going to function as an organization. It could be how we're going to be selling, how we're going to be positioning, how we might even be branding our products. So there can be different types of strategies. They're not necessarily always in a cookie cutter format. But what has to start before you create your marketing plan, and in essence, your marketing strategies, is you have to start with assessment. So there are several different factors. Assessment, which means that you're evaluating a lot of different aspects, gathering data and making an analysis. That's your first part. The next part is really just planning and talking about what the implications are, looking at the data that you've collected and seeing the types of steps that you might want to take in order to capitalize on your homework and on the data collection that you did. Then it's followed by concrete and very targeted strategies that you put together that you want to accomplish. And after that, you would create some specific tactics. You might have some specific marketing tools that you use. Maybe it's some promotional things that you do. Maybe it's literature that you promote. Maybe it's advertising. And then the final loop, or the final part of any marketing strategy, is the evaluation of it. So it's like that with any decision making. You have to decide what it is that you know about a situation. What is it that you're going to do? Then you have to do it, and then you have to really go through and take a look at how is it working. So you evaluate and you apply some control to it to make sure that your strategies are accomplishing what you want them to accomplish. So the marketing plan itself is really a roadmap for the organization. It needs to be something that is comprehensive. It should be fairly broad in its implications. Now, when I was a product manager, what we had was we had several different customer segments that we sold to, and we had lots of products that fell within those ranges. And I worked as a product manager in one of the ranges where we were launching a new analyzer to the market for medical diagnostics customers. We were targeting the low to mid-volume users. So our marketing plan would fit into the larger marketing plan that had high-volume users, one-test users, and lots of different things that was in our bag that we wanted to sell in terms of products. But the marketing plan needs to really take a look at the business, and specifically, like I just described, I was looking at what medium volume customers were doing in the urinalysis market, and specifically in two different segments. One where it was a customer or a clinical-based customer, and the other one was where it was non-clinical. So we sold our urinalysis products to people that were doing drug testing for pre-employment. So you're going to start a job and you had to pee in a cup, and that's what we sold our products for. Or you were going to go maybe work in a laboratory and you were detecting whether or not a person that came in and that was overdosed had taken a certain type of drug. In other words, what I was doing is I was marketing to a certain segment of our broad customer base that we had. So your marketing plan, in effect, may fit into a larger marketing plan. And there are different aspects that are in the handout that's on your course resources. I talked about it last week when we did we had a Zoom meeting and I described all the different written documents that are loaded up in the course resources section. So there's a set of, there's an outline and a set of worksheets that would describe everything that needs to go into the marketing plan. And that is something that you're going to be doing as a final project in this class. And so this chapter talks about that. What are the different contents of the marketing plan? And it will expand more on your understanding of each section. Every marketing plan starts with an executive summary and, of course, a table of contents of what's in the plan. But the executive summary is done at the end. That's something where you've done all your work, you've put together all your strategies and tactics, and then at the end, you summarize in no more than 2 pages what it is that your marketing plan is doing. You know, if you're in a smaller organization, you may not be this formal, but many times in larger organizations, it's a requirement that you more or less summarize the highlights of what it is you're trying to do and where and with whom. So following your executive summary, you're going to start into what's called an environmental analysis, which includes the SWOT analysis. So the SWOT analysis the environmental analysis has to do with looking at all the different situations that would be relevant to marketing your product. So it would be your competition. So these are external forces or things in the outside environment. What's happening with your competition? What's happening in marketing trends? Maybe there's certain technological things that are coming along. So for instance, in the drug testing market, the big thing that's happening now versus when I worked in marketing is a lot of the tests for drug tests are collected with saliva samples because the other body fluids that we use were not that easy to get and required a lot of different aspects in terms of protecting the client's confidentiality and privacy. So a lot of drug testing now includes a saliva swab where there's all kinds of drugs that can be detected. It's a different problem because they're detected at really lower levels, but still you would be looking at environmental factors that are happening that relate to your product that mean you need to change your product if you have a different bodily fluid versus saliva, or if you have saliva, how are you going to capitalize that in terms of marketing your drug tests or what it is you're trying to do in the medical field. Now, the other part of the environmental analysis is an internal environment. So what's happening with your organization? Are you having financial problems? Do you have good resources? Are you hiring people? Are you a dynamic company, and are you doing well overall to be able to handle the needs that a marketing plan would inherently require of the different departments? Because any marketing plan is going to affect the whole entire organization. Also, what's happening with your customer? So is your customer losing money? Is your customer maybe buying things in a different way? What's happening with that? And that's where you're going to be looking at the SWOT. You would be looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that are happening within the customer itself, or even for your own organization. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? So I think I might have talked about this last time, but the strengths and weaknesses are things that really have to do with your organization, and the opportunities and threats have to do with what's happening outside of the organization. Usually what's happening in terms of your competition, or what's going on in the environment, maybe in the regulatory environment that would help you to be a bigger player in the field that you're selling products in. And again, then those would help you to evaluate what's happening overall in terms of the environment and the situation. Now, one of the things that I see people do a lot of times is they collect the data, they do a SWOT, and they never think about it again. They might come up with some strategies, but their strategies are missing really important key elements that they need to look at as a whole when they've collected data and are reviewing it. So it's really important in a marketing sense that you don't just look at what you've collected, you think about it and understand and assess what the implications are of what you just collected. That can really make or break a marketing plan. And a lot of times it has to do with what's happening in the external environment. There might be some regulatory problem, there might be some environmental problem, and let's say if you're an oil company that had a major oil spill, and you're trying to resolve or move away from the negative public relations aspects of the oil spill, you need to be really careful about the new strategies that you come up with, because those could have implications as well in terms of what happened in the past if you had an oil spill. I don't think we're going to do the BP organization case study, but that's another one that's in the textbook that describes how BP negatively reacted to the really bad oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico that was several years ago. Okay, so following your goals, which are broad, and your objectives, which are more specific and need to be quantifiable, then you create strategies, and then you want to go through a plan, which is more or less almost like a project plan, but it's a marketing plan for how you're going to implement the strategies, what kind of tactics and action is required. And then I just mentioned this, but you always need to have some quantifiable goals that you want to achieve. And the thing about quantifiable financial goals is that sometimes it's really difficult to understand what those are, but it's a very worthy exercise. A lot of times if you sit and look at what your financial projections would be, if you really know the environment and if you really know your product and you know your customers, you can make very good financial projections, and you're going to have teams in the organization that can help to contribute to that data. But then overall at the end, you want to be looking at what happened with the plan, how can we evaluate it, and what steps do we have in the plan to control the things that are going on, when they happen, at what time, and how much money we spend. Now, just from a sort of a practical or organizational standpoint, there are different ways that you can look at strategies that you're going to be launching. And this is a chart that's from our textbook. It's a pretty classic way of breaking down the types of strategies that an organization could create. But they might have to do with starting with your present markets and your present customers or products. And then you would see what you want to be doing in terms of developing those strategies. Maybe you want to do some market penetration. You want more customers within your present products and present markets. You want more customers to use them. Or maybe you want to do some kind of new development, so that in a sense you're looking at a new market, but a present product, etc. So if you look at this slide and if you review this in the textbook, it should talk about ways to create new opportunities, and those are basically executed with different strategies that you come up with. One of the other key aspects of doing the situational analysis is where are you going to get the data? And a lot of times small organizations cannot find ways to get the data. You will use different resources to collect the data depending on which organization you work in. I already talked about this. You want to look internally, you want to look at external factors, you want to look at what's happening with the customer, who is the customer, when does the customer purchase, why does the customer not purchase. These are all things that you look at for your customer perspective. In the textbook, there's a bunch of different charts, and there's a good one on page 57. But other factors that could go into your assessment and your evaluation of data up front is what's happening with the economy, what's happening with socioeconomic trends, what cultural things are going to be affecting your products. So all of these different types of things are things that you can either evaluate through your own networks, or you can purchase data on. You can look at the values of the people that are buying your products, and that will directly dictate how you might market. And if you think of different consumer goods, you know, there's women's hair care products, there's women's beauty products, highly competitive market, but there's lots of ways that values might factor into how a woman or a man might purchase a product. So you can acquire data by going directly to the government. The FTC has data. There's a Small Business Administration. There's even more of these types of sources suggested in your textbook. But you also could be looking at trade publications. So you might buy a particular Standard & Poor's, I think is one that you can purchase, Moody's. So you're going to be looking at economic factors or trends and data in certain segments of customers out there. You can join like the American Marketing Association, or you could join, in our case, we joined the Clinical Chemistry organizations. So there's lots of different groups that you can join that you can collect data from. You can also then do primary data, where you go and work with your customers, ask them questions, and you frequently hold focus groups or you send surveys. You can do that through your software, your enterprise resource planning software. You can send out surveys to your either potential users or current users, or you could sit down and do the old-fashioned kind of market research. And we did that with the product that I was working on years ago. So your surveys could have quantitative expectations, in other words, generate data, or you could do qualitative surveys where you find out what the customers are actually saying. You get a small segment that you think is representative of other users, you get their feedback verbally, and then you code that and break it down into what the implications are. Bottom line is, again, is that you need to really analyze what you've got after you've acquired the data. Now, let's say that an organization is looking at possibly diversifying. That's only one of the different ways that, say, Ben & Jerry's could move ahead when they want to develop strategies. They could be looking at market penetration or development, like we already talked about. They could be looking at creating new products or changing their products and doing different development, or they could diversify completely. So I've got some slides here that kind of go through those different types of options and what it is that the users or the people who consume ice cream, the implications might be for the organization. So if they want to sell their current products to their current markets, they might want to just sell more ice cream within the target markets that they sell. Or if they want to do something where Ben & Jerry's wants to have completely new products in completely new markets, maybe they want to add something that's a different focus to the marketing of their products. Maybe they want to have Ben & Jerry's t-shirts. Maybe they want to have Ben & Jerry's conventions. Maybe they want to have Ben & Jerry's hats. Clothing, maybe to children. That's another strategy that Ben & Jerry, just for example, could do to diversify their product mix. Now, what they would need to do is they would need to be looking at different aspects of the people who purchase their products and eat ice cream. So what are the industry trends? Who are their competitors? What's happening to their organization itself? Is it expanding? Does it have money to do new marketing strategies? And they could research present customers, new customers, and take a look at all of their different needs. So in this case, maybe they come up with a SWOT here that has the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats for Ben & Jerry's. And let's just say that what's happening in the ice cream area is things are going full fat. That nobody wants low-fat food anymore. Everybody wants really high, rich ice cream. And so they might find in the external opportunities, external environment, there are some opportunities about people moving away from low-fat. Maybe they want to eat less ice cream, but they don't want it to be low-fat. They want it to be full-fat. So that's another way that the SWOT helps them to target who it is they're selling to, what are the trends that are happening, and what are the types of things that are shaping how we might create some strategies. Now, you could build on a strength. You could correct a weakness. In other words, maybe Ben & Jerry has done some ice cream trends that weren't received well. Maybe they did something that was humorous to them that the customers didn't think was humorous, and they need to correct things. Maybe there's an opportunity happening now like I said, in ice cream where people want to buy full-fat ice cream. Or maybe there's some sort of a potential disaster that could happen, or some kind of major threat. Maybe the dairy industry is increasing prices incredibly, or maybe what's happening in the dairy industry is that people are wanting to buy products that are made of dairy from small farms, not big farms that are creating milk in the old-fashioned way. After that, you want to kind of take a look at how you're going to market your product. So the SWOT then would indicate, all right, if there's a full-fat market, how do we look at the different segment? Which ones are we going to choose? And can we further evaluate their values, their lifestyle, or the ways that they purchase products? So the major way that organizations market themselves is to differentiate themselves. So Ben & Jerry's would differentiate their ice cream based on full fat options, or small independently run dairy farmers, or some other way with new and unusual, maybe international flavors, mixing traditional strawberry with Thai spices in their ice cream. So there's different ways to differentiate. And then the other way that people market is a lot of times is on price. Some sell at a very high price, some at a discounted price, etc. So diversification is actually one of those things that a lot of organizations can focus on in terms of marketing strategies, and a lot of times it will be related to overall organizational goals. So they might want to diversify in a related fashion or an unrelated fashion. So they could actually purchase a company that is within their, like what's called vertical integration, where it's within their range of products, but maybe they purchase small dairies. They purchase companies that are marketing, that are selling, small farms that are selling their milk products. Or maybe they completely diversify, and on a horizontal basis, they buy an organization that has a really big packaging plant so that they can diversify in that way, where they've got better supply chain options for packaging or filling their containers of ice cream. There's conglomerate growth strategies where people like maybe like Virgin Limited would buy companies that focus on maybe environmental factors. They're an airline company. They have lots of different organizations that they purchase just to become a conglomerate and to grow their overall revenue, not necessarily with the same type of product that they're selling. Now, one of the key persons that's a theorist in the whole area of marketing is Michael Porter. Michael Porter has impacted marketing thinking and marketing strategy for a long time, but Porter's generic strategy basically is what I just talked about. That an organization can focus on their cost leadership, or they can focus on being completely different or diversifying. And this slide might look like it has a lot of information on it, but it's really very simple. It's like, if you're going to have a broad focus for cost leadership or a broad focus for diversification, you might take certain steps and implement your strategy that way, but you also want to basically understand that. Are we marketing to a broad scope here, or are we marketing to a narrow scope? And that's what this slide's all about. You can have the cost focus, or you could have a differentiation strategy in your marketing. But what you were really thinking about is we're looking at a niche market. We're looking at a small section of customers where we're going to diversify in terms of cost. And Porter just is reinforcing that, and it's a way for an organization to determine, based on all the different factors we talked about, how you can differentiate and how you can have competitive advantage. So if you look at a Walmart versus a Target, how could the two of them how could Walmart have competitive advantage over Target? Well, Walmart might have a different distribution system. It might have a different way that it brands itself, and it's a broad distribution of cost leadership. Versus somebody else like Apple Computers is going to really go for the aesthetic and the differentiation of its computer on a broad scale versus other manufacturers of computers. So that's the way differentiation and cost can be applied either on a broad or a narrow scale.
What does cost leadership mean?
Well, cost leadership means like with Walmart, you basically have the lowest price out there, and that's the way you sell. That's the way you want to lead the market. And so they have those everyday lower pricing things. So Walmart really takes that to extreme. And Walmart's not having the best outcomes overseas because it can't always use that same strategy everywhere. They need to be able to differentiate better, and they're not doing a very good job of that in some companies, or in some countries rather.
Because the other countries can offer lower prices based on whatever tariffs or whatever. When we go over there, it ends up costing more.
Well, in some countries, like in the EU, it might be that costs are pretty much established. Costs can't go any lower than this. So Walmart is not being prudent to go in there and think that they can undercut what a price is that's already been established. Or let's say that they go into another country like India, and the prices are very, very low all over the place. They really can't differentiate that way. So they're doing well in the US, but it doesn't always translate overseas at all. That's it for chapters 2, 3, and 4. I want to just reinforce a couple of things, that all the assignments open up Monday morning at 9 a.m. And then you will have the week 2 complete them. They are due by Sunday night the following week at midnight. Because the class is so fast and rigorous, we don't accept late assignments. I don't accept late assignments. You can communicate with me if you have a real problem or if you just joined the class, let me know about that. But for the most part, we deal with the discussion threads the first week. They're done. They don't stay open the second week. The other thing I have is my email on here, pwiggin@itu.edu. And I want to just reference things that are in our under course resources. So take a look at the marketing outline worksheets. That's going to be for your final signature assignment. Those documents are in the EMS. Read the book, the document that's called Online Expectations. That has to do with how we want you to interact in the discussion threads and how frequently. Take a look at the How to Analyze a Case document. That'll help you when we have case studies. And the syllabus is on there. The lectures are posted, or the links to the lectures are posted on there, and I always post the slides too. So if you have any questions, contact me, and I wish you best of luck this week in week 2 of our class. Thank you.